Hello everyone. Good morning and welcome to today's The Hindu News Analysis. Myself Nitin K. Biju, I'll be attending the civil service interview this year. In today's news analysis, we'll be discussing about 7 articles from the Hindu newspaper today. Before moving to the first article, I want you to pause for a second and attempt the question by yourself. After discussing the relevant article, we'll be coming back to the question again. So coming to the front page, India reports 128 more deaths, 3,277 fresh cases in 24 hours. So there is a sign of slowing down of the fresh cases. We should see whether it is consistent in the coming days also. Also, the total recovery rate has increased to 30.76 percentage. So the recovery rate is also increasing. The data released by the ministry also noted that in 10 states or UTs, no COVID-19 cases have been reported in the past 24 hours. So there is a chance of slowing down. The numbers are telling that there might be a chance of slowing down, but it has to be consistent in the coming days also. So in another unfortunate news, the truck carrying migrant workers overturns, 5 killed. So the migrant workers were returning to Uttar Pradesh from Madhya Pradesh, and the accident happened in Madhya Pradesh. So the migrant workers, the woes of the migrant workers has no end as of now. Coming to the third article, norms issued for restart of industrial units. So this is in the backdrop of the styrene gas leak which has killed 11 people and injured around hundreds of thousands of people. So after the styrene gas leak, the National Disaster Management Authority has issued a series of guidelines for restarting the manufacturing industries after the lockdown period. The instructions have been issued for safekeeping of hazardous and inflammable materials. So as we all know, the materials, the hazardous and inflammable materials, they are being lying idle for a long time. There can be temperature changes. There can be reactions which might have happened in the case of styrene. In the case of styrene, what happened is styrene is actually a liquid. It is an inflammable liquid which has been stored. But what happened is, due to the for a long time it was staying idle, so what happened, there was temperature changes and the polymerization happened. When this polymerization happened, it vaporized and the liquid became in the vapor state, and it became styrene gas, and it got leaked through the industry. So that is what happened in the styrene gas leak case. So in order to avoid such issues again, the NDMA guidelines has been issued. And the main article, the fourth article is India Chinese troops face off in Ladakh and Sikkim. So this will be discussing in detail in the coming slide. So India Chinese troops face off in Ladakh and Sikkim. So two incidents of face off occurred between Indian and Chinese troops last week, resulting in injuries to several soldiers on both sides, army sources confirmed. The first incident occurred in eastern Ladakh on May 5th and the second at Nakula in Sikkim on May 9th. The issues were resolved locally. So the face-off occurred between the troops, and as a result of aggressive behavior, minor injuries were caused to both sides. Troops disengaged after dialogue and interaction at the local level. So the first incident happened in Nakula sector, that is ahead of Mugutang. It is at an altitude of around 16,000 feet. We'll be seeing the map of this area in the next slide. And the second incident happened in the near Pangong So Lake. That is the lake of which a major part is held by China. So this lake is in eastern Ladakh. Okay, we'll be seeing the map of this also in the coming slide. And this Pangong So Lake is famous in a movie also. Try to guess which movie. Okay. Also, temporary and brief face-off occur because the boundary is undemarcated, especially in areas like Ladakh, Sikkim, and all, where the terrain is a bit difficult. The boundaries are usually undemarcated, and disputes occur between countries like India and China. China says more parts of the area belong to Chinese, but India says it belongs to India. So, because of these issues, because of this demarcation, lack of demarcation, these issues keep on happening for a long time, right? So coming to the first one, Nakula Pass. As we can see, Nakula Pass is a pass at the northernmost end of Sikkim. Okay, so this should not be confused with Nathula Pass. Nathula Pass is another pass in Sikkim itself, but its area is different. Please go to the map to see which area Nathula Pass belongs to. It is in the eastern part of Sikkim. Okay. So this is Nakula Pass, and you can use this map as a diagram in the mains answer writing. When you write any answer related to India-China relations and the border issues, you can please draw a map related of Nakula Pass also. So coming to Pangong Lake in eastern Ladakh, so this is the location of Pangong Lake. You can see that it is in the eastern part of the Ladakh, right? And it has a it is near the area where India has border issues with China. That is the area where LAC, line of actual control, belongs to, right? And it is also the area of Aksai Chin region, right? So please go through the map of this. Also coming to, this is the Pangong Tso Lake. It was at the it was there in the climax of the movie Three Idiots, right? So this is the Pangong Lake where India and China is having issues. Now coming back to the practice question, Nathula and Jalapla Pass are situated in. So the answer is A, Sikkim. Option A, Sikkim. So now we know three passes which are there in Sikkim. One is Nathula, one is Jalapla Pass, and the third one is the Nakula, which is there in the present news, right? So the Nakula and Nathula Pass should not be confused with. Now, coming to the main article of the day, the trend shaping the post COVID 19 world. This is a very nice article written by Rakesh Sood on the trends which happen after this post COVID 19 happened in the world, in the governance of the world, right? So, the first trend is Asia ascending and US waning. So, the Asian power, the Asia's power is increasing compared to the European and the US powers. So the first trend which came clear in the aftermath of 2008 global financial crisis is the rise of Asia. Also, till the 18th century, as we all know, Asia accounted for half of the global GDP. So till the 18th century, Asia was very powerful. Even India was a rich country, right? Also, the Industrial Revolution, accompanied by the European naval expansion and colonialism, contributed to the rise of the West after the 18th century. And now the balance is being restored now. So the 2008 financial crisis, it showed that showed the resilience of the Asian economies. And even today, among the G20 countries, only India and China are likely to register the economic growth, positive economic growth of, even if it is less, it's around 1%. Still, India and China are the only countries which record a positive economic growth during the 2020, after the 2020, right? Also, Asian countries have also shown greater agility in tackling the pandemic. For example, countries like India, China, and even South Korea, Vietnam. So these are the countries which were able to successfully limit the COVID-19 pandemic compared to US and other European countries like Italy, UK, and all. So also the Asian economies will recover faster than that in the West also. So that is the first trend. That is the rise of the Asian economies. Coming to the second trend, it is the retreat of the US after a century of being in the forefront of shaping the global order. So, as we all know, from the times of the after the First World War, that is the Treaty of Versailles happened after the First World War, right? So, after the Treaty of the Versailles, the formation of the League of Nations. League of Nations is the predecessor of the United Nations, right? So, League of Nations after the World War, or even the creation of United Nations and the Bretton Woods institutions. So, what are these Bretton Woods institutions? These are the IMF, World Bank, etc. So, after this creation of the Bretton Woods institution, the leadership of the Western world during the Cold War, even all these things were in the hand of the US, right? So, now the dominance of the US is reducing. For example, at the time of Barack Obama, he sensed that he have to withdraw from the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, etc. So he coined the term of leading from behind instead of leading from front. So they started withdrawing slowly, and the withdrawal is almost like complete with the America First policy of Donald Trump. Also we know about the US Afghanistan deal, US Taliban deal, which happened recently, right? So the dominance of the USA is reducing. Now the situation has become to an extent that America is withdrawing itself into a protectionist stand, where America First has essentially converted to America alone policy, right? So the US is still remain, but the US still remains the largest economy and the largest military power, but it has lost the will and the ability to lead. Coming to the third trend, One is, that is intra-European fission. So this COVID-19 pandemic has caused division between the European countries also. Already there were internal challenges generated by its expansion of membership to the East European states. That is after the disintegration of Russia in 1991, the East European states who were part of erstwhile Soviet Union, they were merged into the European Union, right? Also, the impact of the financial crisis among the Eurozone members and ongoing Brexit negotiation. These are various factors which has divided the European countries. Also, it is the European Union finds it increasingly difficult to reach agreement on political matters. For example, the relations with Russia and China. With, for example, you might have seen that Italy became the only G7 member to join the Belt and Road Initiative of China. So, whereas the other European countries didn't want to join it. So, these kind of issues were happening already between European countries. Adding to this is the north-south divide within the Eurozone. So, as we all know, in Europe also there are some issues and a division between the northern European countries and the southern European countries. Which are the southern European countries? They are Greece, Italy, Spain, and Portugal. And coming to the northern countries, they are the Austria, Germany, and the Netherlands. So there are economic issues between these two regions also, because the northern countries are more economically powerful, and coming to the southern countries, the Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and all, they're economically more weak, and they had this issue of inflation, recession, all those stuffs, right? So that also has divided the European nations. Further damage was done when Italy was denied medical equipments by its EU neighbors who introduced export controls, which led China airlifting medical teams and critical supplies. So Italy was denied help from the European nations. Also, Schengen visa or free border movement has already become a victim to the pandemic. So what is this visa all about? This visa is gives free traveling inside the European countries without any visa and all, right? So people can travel from one country to another inside the European Union due to this free border movement, due to Schengen visa. So but now whether that visa will continue or not, it is in confusion now. Now coming to the fourth trend, it is a rise of China. So it is the emergence of a stronger and more assertive China. So we have already seen that China's aggression is increasing with respect to India, also with respect to South China Sea, also with respect to US also. The US-China relationship moved on from cooperation to competition. And now with trade and technology wars, it is moving steadily towards confrontation. So initially US thought that they'll get a good market in China. So US helped China to grow. But after growing, now China is coming against the US itself, right? Also, Mr. Xi Jinping, he has engaged in an unprecedented centralization of power. We have already seen that he will continue beyond 2022. That is, earlier there was a two-term limit for the Chinese president, right? Now that limit is also removed. Also, the Belt and Road Initiative has also is increasing China's dominance in the world economy, right? Now, coming to the fifth trend, that is the fading organizations. For example, the organizations like the WHO, they were supposed to be the natural candidate to lead the global efforts against the health crisis. But WHO has become a victim of the politics. For example, US has stopped the funding to the WHO. So all those issues are affecting the WHO. Also, the other global organizations like the United Nations Security Council, the G7 countries, the G20 countries, all are paralyzed now. And now the COVID-19 efforts are being national efforts only. There is a lack of an international effort as of now, right? So here you can please go through the G7 and the G20 countries. Why are they formed and all, right? So here it is written that G20 countries was formed to coordinate a global response to the 2008 financial crisis. Also India and China are a part of the G20. So please go through these institutions, see whether India is a part of it or whether India is not a part of it. So all these all these facts are very important for prelims purposes. Also, the last trend, that is the sixth trend, is the energy factor. So, as we all know, due to this COVID-19 pandemic, we all know that one of the major culprit of this is the increasing pollution which is relating to which is resulting into global warming, air pollution, etc. So a shift towards the green technologies will happen. Also, United States will emerge as a major energy producer. Also, a looming economic recession and depressed oil prices will exacerbate the internal tensions in the West Asian countries, which are solely dependent on oil revenues. Recently, we have seen that due to the less demand of the oil prices are crashing, right? So, the Western economies might face difficulty to continue its dominance in the energy sector, and green technologies will come into picture. Also, rising nationalism and protectionist responses will prolong the economic recession into a depression, sharpening inequalities and polarizations. So, greater unpredictability and more turbulent times lie ahead. So, this is a very important article from the mains perspective. If the mains, if the question is asked on the basis on the post COVID-19 world, so these points can be added. Coming to the editorial of the day, coming to terms. As early as March 28 itself, the Health Ministry acknowledged that there was limited community transmission of the novel coronavirus in India. So, this article is related to community transmission. As we all know, the COVID 19 pandemic has various stages of transmission. One is there is a imported cases, then the second stage comes to local transmission, that is people who have transmitted from this imported cases, right? After local transmission comes the community transmission, where the infected person is not able to trace the origin from where got the infection. So this is the stage of community transmission. So in a journal paper provided evidence suggesting the prevalence of community transmission in 36 districts across 15 states. But what happened? The ICMR consistently maintained that the virus has not spread to the community. India has consistently denied the community transmission in India. While there has been no hesitation in declaring local transmission, the government has been extremely hesitant to admit community transmission. But this is a bad step, right? So in contrast, in the coming to the US, when the cases were just 60, it confirmed community transmission. So, but India already the cases have been above 60,000. Still, the community transmission is not acknowledged by the government. Against this background, the latest decision to initiate a study in 75 hotspot district to confirm community spread and ascertain the proportion of the community already exposed to the virus is encouraging. So, this study in the 75 hotspot district, it is already late, but it's fine. Better late than never, right? So, based on this studies, we should confirm whether community transmission has taken place or not. The study has apparently got delayed about a month due to the non-availability of reliable rapid antibody test. So, here the issue is that, so in order to find community transmission, we have to test the community, right? We have to do mass testing of many people in the community. But what happened is, so for mass testing, we should have rapid antibody test, and we have imported it from China, and they were faulty, right? So that's why this mass testing of community has been in delay, getting delayed. But now what happened is, the government will be using the ELISA test to check for infection. Since the ELISA test detects antibodies to the virus, the survey will be able to pick previously infected person also. This is the difference between PCR test and the antibody test. Antibody test will be able to detect people who were affected previously also, whereas PCR test can detect only people who are affected presently. Only the current infections will be detected through PCR test, right? Also, since it takes 1 to 3 weeks for the antibodies to develop, the ELISA test will miss people who have been recently infected. So this is one of the negative of the ELISA test. The survey is scheduled to begin later this month in collaboration with the states concerned, will randomly test about 30,000 people in the general population. Meanwhile, all the states, what should the states do? The states should continue with strict containment and mitigation measures, acting on the assumption that the virus has indeed spread in the community. The state should not deny community transmission, whereas the state should acknowledge that community transmission has taken place and improve the containment measures and in a strict manner. So that is what the editorial is talking about. Coming to the next article, the face of exploitation. So this is regarding the migrant workers, the issues faced by the migrant workers due to government policies related to the COVID-19 pandemic. So one warning I have to give you here, this is a very critical article against the government. So here we have to limit ourselves what we take out from this article. We should not be overly critical of the government, but we should take out only the issues faced by the migrant workers in the pandemic. Okay, so we don't the I mean we don't expect to write too much critical against the government in the main answers. So as thousands of migrant workers walk across India in a desperate attempt to reunite with their families, the states are competing with one another to provide greater relaxations of labor laws to appear industry friendly. As we all know, labor laws try to provide rights to the workers, right? But the states are recently trying to amend the labor laws to make it more industry friendly rather than labor friendly. So UP, for instance, has cleared an ordinance exempting businesses and industries from labor laws except for a handful for 3 years. So for 3 years, the labor laws will be kept hold. So that is what the ordinance by Uttar Pradesh is telling. The center has also done the same through its many circulars and clarifications issued during the lockdowns. So coming to the the lockdown has clearly established that migrant workers are the backbone of the India's economy. But what happened is a peculiar situation is happening here. So the industry heads were worried that there would be labor shortage when the industry reopened if the migrant workers return to their home. So the industries don't want the migrant workers to go back to their home, right? Also, however, the same industries did nothing to give ensure that these workers were given adequate food, shelter, and their dues during the lockdown. So industries didn't want them to go back also, as well as they were not willing to give the essential items to the workers also. So the industries were in this situation. Yet another circular said that the workers who already don't have any money left with them, they have to pay for their train tickets to go back to their natives. So it was clear that all these were deliberate attempts to prevent the workers from leaving the state. So the article is telling that the industries and the government, they didn't want the migrants to go back to their state. So that is why they kept train tickets. They charged on the train tickets. Otherwise, the central government should have ensured that the travel was free, right? So, coming to the constitutional perspective, the states and center are consistently and systematically violating the fundamental rights of the migrant workers. Article 23 of the Constitution prohibits forced labor. Also, a Supreme Court judgment said that the word forced labor, it must include force arising from the compulsion of the economic circumstances, which leaves no choice of alternatives of a person in want and compels him to provide labor or services even though the remuneration received is less than the minimum wage. So this is the situation which is happening now, right? So this is an economic situation. This is an economic situation which is forcing the migrants to stay back and work. So according to this Supreme Court judgment, the present situation with the migrant workers are facing, it also comes under forced labor, which is prohibited under Article 23 of the Constitution. Also, the International Labor Organization also has some guidelines that prevents this forced labor, right? So thus the article is telling that various home ministry directives and the state ordinances would be violative not only to India's own constitution but also to its international commitments. Also, the workers are being treated as a resource to be exploited by the industry and the state. So this is the article which this is what the article is talking about. It is very critical about the government and the industries because they are exploiting the migrants, right? So coming to the next article, NIV develops test to detect antibodies. So we have already talked about ELISA test in the editorial. So we'll be discussing about that test in detail here. The National Institute of Virology, Pune, has developed an ELISA test. What is the full form of ELISA? Enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay test, right? So detect antibodies that the body develops in response to the infection of the SARS-CoV-19 COVID virus. So here there are two types of test. One is the antigen test and second one is the antibody test. Antigen test detects the presence of the antigen in the body. Antigen means the virus. So if the virus is present in the body, antigen test will confirm it. For an example of an antigen test is PCR test, right? It will confirm the presence of the virus in the test. Also, the body develops antibody, which is proteins which are generated to fight the virus, right? So uh, the uh, the infection can be confirmed using antibody test also. What is an example of antibody test? The rapid test, the serological test, and as well as this ELISA test. These are examples of antibody test. So the kit developed here, it is showing high sensitivity and accuracy. Besides, it has the advantage of testing 90 samples together in a single run of 2.5 hours. So the test is very fast also. He also said, I mean the Union Health Minister also said that the NIV has transferred the technology to Cydus Cadila, that is another company for mass scale production. So this is the first time India has developed an indigenous ELISA test for coronavirus. So the company that has licensed the manufacturing the license to manufacture the ELISA test kit, it will have about a month to make the test available, because as we have already seen, uh, we have decided to take 30,000 blood samples randomly from the general population in 75 hotspot district to see whether community transmission has happened or not. So we have already seen in the editorial before, right? So what is the significance of this? The significance is that, as we all know, the rapid antibody test imported from China, they were found to be unreliable. So this ELISA test developed by the NIV gained significance in this background, because this can replace the rapid antibody test which we imported from China, and therefore we can do mass testing, right? So ELISA test will be used to screen 30,000 samples from 75 hotspot districts to understand the extent of the spread of the virus in the community. Since ELISA test is based on detection of antibodies, not antigens, it can only help in knowing if the person has been previously infected by the coronavirus. Okay. So using antigen test, we cannot detect the previous infections, because by that time, if a person has recovered from it, the antigen won't be present in the body of the person. So the previous infections cannot be found out using antigen test, that is the PCR test, whereas using ELISA test, it can be found out, which is written here. While the RT-PCR test, the RNA detects the RNA of the coronavirus, enables detection of the current infection only. It will not be useful in testing if the testing is carried out after the infection clears and the virus will be no longer present in the body. However, antibodies developed in response to the coronavirus infection will be present in the blood for a longer duration. The antibodies will be in our body for a longer duration, that will be providing us immunity for a longer time and from reinfections, right? So antibodies will be continuing to present, and it can be tested even after the infection gets over, using the rapid antibody test or the ELISA test and all. So that is all about this article. So this NIV test will definitely help us in finding out whether a community transmission has taken place. So that is all about today's article. I hope you like the video. Please press the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Have a great day. Thank you.